I want to talk about why and how I ranked the top 50 players for the 2021 MLB season, but if you don't care, timestamp right there to begin the list. I won't be mad, I promise. We've recently seen the reveal of MLB Network's top 100 right now, and while I don't think it's collectively a bad list, I definitely have some disagreements. Alongside my ranking, I'll be sure to note each player's ranking on the MLB Network list, and I'll try to plead my case when there's a large discrepancy between the two. Foolish Baseball has always been about providing another perspective on the game, one that you don't typically get in super mainstream sports media, and I'm hoping to do that today, provide an alternative perspective. This list doesn't care about runs batted in and pitcher wins because front offices don't care about runs batted in or pitcher wins. I used a lot of stats for this list, mostly whatever was convenient. I looked at park-adjusted hitting stats like OPS+, where 100 is league average. I looked at advanced defensive metrics and WAR. I looked at projection systems like Zips, Steamer, The Bat, and Pacoda. I also looked at expected stats on Baseball Savant and the deserved runs allowed and created figures on Baseball Prospectus. However, I also used plenty of gut intuition. This isn't a list entirely driven by numbers, merely aided by them. I also didn't rank relief pitchers. I didn't want to do that. It's hard enough to rank starting pitchers alongside hitters. Would I rather have the best relief pitcher of 2021 than the 50th best player on this list? Probably. Can you predict who the best reliever is going to be ahead of any given season? Very rarely. I didn't want to play that game. Relievers are a fickle bunch. I generally asked myself, who do I think is going to have the most wins above replacement in 2021? But I give a small boost to bat-only corner outfielders, first basemen, and designated hitter types who are punished on the defensive side of things when it comes to WAR. Also made adjustments for catchers because they generally play fewer games. There wasn't a formula or anything for doing this. I just kind of acknowledged the effect the positions have on WAR, as well as the fact that offense is easier to measure than defense and base running. The biggest thing to remember with this list is the title of the video itself, Top 50 Players for 2021. I've looked at past performances to build these rankings, but they're trying to predict future performance, specifically performance in 2021. You're not going to see Justin Verlander on this list. You're not going to see Chris Sale. They're injured right now. They're not going to be able to play the full season. You're not going to see the top 50 players based on past performance. It'll be based on perceived future performance in the 2021 season. And finally, one last note. There are no honorable mentions. There's no paying lip service to the guys who just missed. Either you're on the list or not. And I know there's going to be a bunch of people sounding off in the comments about snubs or underrating their favorite players, but I actually think that's great. The biggest takeaway from this video should be that there's a lot of great players in MLB right now. So, without further ado, I present to you all the Foolish 50. Despite the departures of Darvish, Bauer, and Taillon, the NL Central has no shortage of talented right-handed pitching. The division boasts Kyle Hendricks, Jack Flaherty, Sonny Gray, and Luis Castillo, yet I really think I like Brandon Woodruff most of all, which is curious because MLB Network didn't even rank him in their top 100. On a per-inning basis, Woodruff has been spectacular. In his last 30 starts, he has a 3.04 ERA and 2.94 FIP. Of course, FIP accounts for the three true outcomes, but he also excels at getting soft contact, with an average exit velocity against of about 86 miles per hour. The biggest question mark is if he can deliver 30 healthy starts in a season and pitch deep enough in those starts to justify being on the list. But everything else screams elite, especially his ability to throw a fastball. The Rays won the American League pennant last year, but only have one representative on this list, Mr. Brandon Lowe. It's deserved. Lowe was the best regular season player on the American League's best team. Put simply, he absolutely crushes the baseball. In 2020, he was in the 94th percentile for expected slugging and 98th percentile for barrel frequency. He currently boasts a career slash line of 262 average, 342 on base, 513 slugging, and has gotten better every season. In my opinion, he's most valuable at second base, where he's currently slated to get the majority of his action. There's a certain number one prospect that may push him to the outfield, though. Number 48 is Jose Abreu, your reigning AL MVP. It's not a surprise that Abreu is on this list. MLB Network ranked him comfortably at number 31. but my placement might seem low. Abreu certainly had a career year in 2020 with a 166 OPS plus, but he was coming off the heels of being a 118 OPS plus hitter in 2018, 2019. The biggest thing Abreu may be able to boast is a defensive turnaround. He graded out above average at first base according to defensive runs saved, ultimate zone rating, and outs above average. So a huge congrats to him for the MVP award, but I'm happy with putting him in range of Brandon Lau, who might just be a similar level hitter at a more premium position. I am so excited to say this. Next up is Clayton Kershaw. A couple years ago, I made a baseball bits declaring his prime is over. I still think that's true. He won't replicate 2011 to 2017, but I do think he has found a way to ride the aging curve with grace. Of course, non-peak Kershaw is still better than almost every other pitcher in baseball. 2020 was his best year since 2017. It was only 10 starts, but it was 10 really good starts. The biggest reason I have him on this list is that he combated his declining fastball velocity by actually adding 1.3 miles per hour. Overall, love Clayton Kershaw. Best pitcher of a generation. Glad he has a ring. But this ranking feels about right to me. Much like Abreu, he could climb a lot more by showing he can replicate 2020's success across a full season. Since the start of the 2019 season, Nelson Cruz has a 168 OPS plus, good for second among qualified hitters. Why is he rated so low at number 46 if he's been the second best hitter in baseball? Age is a part of it. He's got to slow down eventually. Position is a part of it. He's a DH through and through. But my biggest concern is the batted ball data from 2020, which produced by far his lowest xWOBA of the StatCast era. His average exit velo dropped by over 2 miles per hour. So while the past performance has been amazing, I'm tempering expectations on what he'll do going forward. Still on the list though. While Nelson Cruz's batted ball data might cause concern, Max Muncy's might be soothing. He had a 192 batting average in 2020, but the underlying data suggests a player that is still capable of a 130 OPS plus or higher. For starters, the poor guy had a 208 BABIP. He also dealt with injuries to his hand and wrist. In the postseason, he showed what he really is, a man who gets on base. He had a 438 on-base percentage in the playoffs thanks to 20 walks in 18 games. That's special. The only knock on Muncy is that he seems to be pigeonholed as a first baseman when he used to be a much more versatile infielder for the Dodgers. Oh, and if Muncy seriously struggles, Edwin Rios is lurking. Speaking of the Dodgers, are you tired of them? I sure hope not, because number 44 is Walker Buehler. Now, I think the Walker Buehler discourse can be a little presumptive at times. There's a lot of presuming that he's a top-tier starting pitcher in MLB, but I think he has plenty of good competition. The 2020 regular season was a setback for him in some ways, as he battled blisters, but like Muncy, he handled business in the playoffs. Buehler's just wildly talented, and he has an upside that very few pitchers possess. I hope we see it so I can move him up this list. Jeff McNeil is really something, and we've been asking, is this sustainable, for a while now, but I think our questions have been answered. In over 1,000 career big league plate appearances, he has slashed a .319 batting average, .383 on-base percentage, and .501 slugging percentage. He has a truly unique ability to hit for elite batting average while still maintaining some semblance of home run power and plate discipline. He had a slow start to 2020, but then caught fire to put up numbers that were right in line with where he's been for the rest of his career. My only complaint, he's best suited as a third baseman, but currently slated to play second. Ketel Marte, I can't quit you that easily. Not after what I saw in the year 2019 of our Lord. Unlike McNeil, Marte has been a StatCast superstar at times. His ability to hit the ball hard without striking out is what put him on the radar of many analysts before he truly broke out. The thing about Marte is this. He doesn't need to be the 148 OPS plus guy he was in 2019 to be a top 50 player. He just needs to hang around 120 and let his defense and base running do the rest. With this ranking, I'm holding out hope that he can do it. Speaking of holding out hope, it's Carlos Correa, one of the hardest players to rank. If you put Carlos Correa at number 25, I'd nod my head and say, okay, sure. If you put him at number 75, I'd nod my head and say, okay, sure. In 75 games in 2019, Correa had a .926 OPS and was worth 3.2 FWAR. I was thinking, This guy is back. Wait till he gets a full season. Obviously, 2020 was shortened, but he played in 58 of the Astros' 60 games, and it wasn't great. I'm still holding out hope because of that tremendous upside, but Correa performing as a slightly below league average hitter sure was disappointing. At least he hit 6 homers in the playoffs, which was more than the 5 he hit in the regular season. Not gonna lie, I was pretty stoked when MLB Network had Will Smith ranked at number 50. I actually have him ranked at number 40, which even I think seems nutty, but Will Smith, in his first 2 seasons, is a 146 OPS plus hitter. That's absolutely unbelievable for a catcher. That's even better than Gary Sanchez being a 139 OPS plus guy across his first 2 campaigns. Now look, is Will Smith a great defensive catcher? No, but maybe he can get better. Will the Dodgers still use Austin Barnes? Yes, they should. But any catcher that can hit like Will Smith is a star. He's a much more complete hitter than the likes of Gary Sanchez because he walked almost as much as he struck out in 2020. I'm sure Dodgers fans might be surprised at some of the teammates he's ranked ahead of, but let me put it this way. Will Smith is kind of like if Max Muncy was a bad catcher, but you gotta keep in mind that being a bad catcher is usually still better than being a good first baseman. Michael Conforto is about to turn 28, but it feels like he's been around for a long time, and during that time, he established a pretty impressive baseline performance. However, my opinion of Conforto grew a lot during the shortened 2020 season. It's almost as if I saw the light on the road to Damascus. This Michael Conforto guy can really play. Sure, he had a 412 BABIP last year, but that just means he's a 130 OPS plus guy rather than a 160 OPS plus guy. Still good. Once you account for his stellar defense in right field, you'll find that there really aren't very many better outfielders in Major League Baseball right now. This might be the name I'm most excited to drop. Number 38 is my highest ranked designated hitter, Yordan Alvarez. And look at the surprise on your face. I hope you didn't forget Yordan. MLB Network certainly did when they didn't even rank him in their top 100. In 87 games in 2019, mind you, that's a much larger sample size than the entire 2020 season, Yordan Alvarez slashed .313, .412, .655. Let me repeat that again. Yordan Alvarez slashed .313, .412, .655 as a 22-year-old rookie. He hit 27 home runs in 87 games. The man looks like he was built in a factory, and the StatCast data actually backs up his greatness. This is an absolutely top-tier hitter going into 2021. Every projection system already knows it. Do not sleep on him like the good folks at MLB Network did. It just seems nice that Alvarez and Giancarlo Stanton ended up right next to each other. Both have missed a bunch of games recently, and they both might be the top raw power hitters in the league when healthy. Stanton has played in 41 of a possible 222 games since the start of the 2019 season. 58 if you count the playoffs. But when he plays, he still seems like Giancarlo Stanton. In those 58 games, he has 15 homers and a .554 slugging percentage. StatCast is still loving it as well, as he's a 400 xWOBA guy. A healthy 2021 season is far from guaranteed, but I haven't seen any indication that the injuries have affected Stanton's potential upside. To me, that's what matters. Stanton will fall out of the top 50 when he plays below his standards, not when he doesn't play at all. It's been a while since we had a pitcher. You know who I like? Aaron Nola. I've come around on him. It's still ludicrous that Baseball Reference thinks he was a 10-WAR pitcher in 2018, but 2020 may have been his finest season yet. He struck out 33.2% of all batters faced, 6th best among qualified starters. He's also a lead in terms of the volume he provides. Nola has tossed 486 innings over the past 3 seasons, second only behind Jacob deGrom. Arm injuries can strike at any time, but that stamina is impressive in today's game. There aren't very many pitchers left that could dream of throwing 200 innings in a season, but Nola is one of them, a true ace in every sense of the word. Whenever Hyunjin Ryu gets snubbed, I think a fantasy baseball mindset is often to blame. Ryu is not an elite strikeout guy, but he is an elite run prevention guy. Since the start of the 2019 season, Ryu boasts a 2.42 ERA and a 1.74 ERA+. That's actually the best in Major League Baseball over the last 2 seasons among qualified starters. So, While the projection systems and the FIP-based wars might not love him as much, the name of the game is still to not let the other teams score. Ryu understands that allowing runs is for suckers, and he's proven he can do it with 2 teams now. If anything, I'm worried that I haven't ranked him high enough, but you still have to acknowledge the injury history, as well as the fact that he has to be more precise compared to the guys with crazy raw swing and miss stuff. I had JT Realmuto ranked about 5 spots higher before news of his broken thumb came out. He's hoping to be ready by opening day, but that doesn't completely alleviate concerns for the 2021 season. When a player misses spring training games, April often becomes their spring training. Realmuto appears to be on a relatively upward career trajectory. I think this might be because he didn't start catching until he turned pro. This might mean he has less wear and tear from the position compared to his peers. He is turning into a really good framer to complement his wicked arm, and 2020 was highlighted by a power surge, although he kind of sold out to do it. What makes Realmuto special is that he's an incredibly gifted athlete who just happens to play catcher. The Phillies are going to be glad they kept him. After mixed results in St. Louis, Marcell Ozuna came to Atlanta and nearly won the Triple Crown. Ozuna was already a StatCast darling with the Cardinals, but his expected stats never seemed to line up with his actual performance. Some even theorized that his swing had a slice, leading to underperformance relative to his elite exit velocity and launch angle distribution. In 2020, that wasn't a problem. He tore the cover off the ball, and it showed with an OPS well over 1,000. I'm not anticipating that happening again, but his 930 OPS projection is plenty enough to forgive whatever shortcomings he may have in the outfield. As someone who watched him all season, let me tell you, the DRS and UZR might seem fine, the eye test is not pretty. Max Scherzer is number 32 on this list, and he'll be turning 37 during the season. In 12 starts last year, he dealt with his highest home run rate since 2011, highest walk rate since 2010, and highest whip of his career. And he was still pretty good. Like Kershaw, the days of Max Scherzer being the best pitcher in baseball are over, but I do think he's still one of the top starters out there. Based on last year's numbers, H hasn't chipped away at his velocity yet, but his innings per start dipped below 6, so I suspect those 200-inning seasons might be over. I know we're ranking players, but let's talk about Grandal without talking about Realmuto. For those of you that have seen the Jeff Mathis video on Foolish Baseball, Yasmani Grandal is a framing god. Over the past 3 seasons, Fangraphs has him at second in framing runs behind Austin Hedges. He's also an elite hitter, parentheses, for a catcher. During that same stretch, he's second among all catchers in OPS Plus with 119, trailing only Mitch Garver. That's with a minimum of 500 plate appearances. Those skill sets add up to where he's ranked right now, as the 31st ranked player on this list, but also the top catcher in MLB for the 2021 season. I've got Paul Goldschmidt coming in at number 30. Before leaving Arizona, he was the definition of consistent greatness, but his first year in St. Louis was a small step back. His .821 OPS in 2019 was the lowest since his rookie year. In 2020, he laid most of that concern to rest, adding 40 points to his batting average and 70 points to his on-base percentage. This came at the cost of power, as he hit just 6 home runs in 58 games. But if there's any first baseman that can remain elite without massive home run totals, it's probably Paul Goldschmidt. He's just a fundamentally great hitter. It also helps that he fields his position very well compared to some of the other hulking first base sluggers. Next up is for full transparency, friend of the channel, Lucas Giolito. Well, maybe friend is too far, but acquaintance for sure. After being perhaps the worst qualified starting pitcher in 2018, Giolito now has a multi-year track record of success, and that track record has led him to become, according to Dan Szymborski's Zips, the number 1 projected starting pitcher in MLB. Of course, that's Zips, but it's still an interesting tidbit. Entering his age 26 season, Giolito is young compared to most of the pitchers on this list, which the projection systems like. Part of what makes Giolito so great is that he's a big swing and miss guy, having struck out over a third of the batters he faced last season. But it's not just that. When he does get hit, he doesn't get hit hard. In 2020, his expected slugging on batted balls was in the 74th percentile of all starting pitchers, and of all the pitchers you'll see ranked on this very list, only Woodruff and Ryu did better. MLB Network has him ranked at 69th. Nice. But I find that laughable. Apart from Yordan Alvarez and Brandon Woodruff, I think this might be our biggest disagreement. Trey Turner had an incredible 2020 season, stealing 12 bases and nearly OPSing 1,000. And although it was a 60-game season, it was part of a broader trend of improvement for Turner, who has progressively gotten better over each of the last 3 years. His 99th percentile sprint speed drives a lot of what he does. He benefits from putting the ball in play, which he did by only striking out in 14% of plate appearances last season. But equally impressive is his ability to put up consistently good exit velocities. Most low strikeout guys don't, but Turner's average exit velocity has been over 90 miles per hour each of the past 2 seasons. His defense is underrated as well, all culminating into a really excellent baseball player. Coming in at number 27 is noted YouTuber Trevor Bauer. I think purely in terms of performance, we've seen the emergence of a narrative that Trevor Bauer became the highest paid player in MLB because of 2 good months in 2020. And I don't think that's true. He pitched hurt in 2019 and nearly won the Cy Young Award in 2018 before a Jose Abreu comebacker effectively ended his campaign. Within that 2018 season, he had a 2-month stretch in the middle that was better than his 2020 performance. So he's done this before. He also started the discourse on sticky stuff, but if I had to guess, I'd say every pitcher on this list is using something to get a better grip on the baseball. So I say, Trevor, keep doing it until the league makes you stop. However, I do not condone the same attitude for cyberbullying, whether it's Bauer quote tweeting random critics or me getting owned by ESPN's Jeff Passan. Xander Bogaerts is a guy who rakes and just happens to play shortstop. He's one of 6 hitters to qualify for the batting title and put up at least a 130 OPS plus in each of the past 3 seasons. The others are Mike Trout, Anthony Rendon, Freddie Freeman, Nelson Cruz, and Mookie Betts. So Bogaerts has established a baseline of hitting performance and availability that few can measure up to. The downside to his game is that he's just not a particularly good defensive shortstop. He's not the worst in the league, but among everyday shortstops, he's probably close. And the shortstops I have chosen to rank above Mr. Bogaerts all have much more to offer with the glove, so he stays at number 26 for now. Manny Machado has proven to be a player with high season-to-season variance. Since 2016, he has alternated between great seasons and seasons. 2020 was a great season for him, as he finished 3rd in NL MVP voting and won a Silver Slugger. I think with Machado, what you have to do is probably split the difference between these great and seasons, which means saying he's probably a 125 to 130 OPS plus true talent hitter combined with really good defense at third base. That's the most fair assessment we can give until he has 2 monster seasons in a row. And I think just to prove that the defensive spectrum exists for a reason, if Manny Machado still played shortstop, he'd be Xander Bogaerts, the guy he's right next to on the list. Number 24 is Darvish. After signing his 6-year deal with the Cubs, it looked like the contract would be an albatross. He started 8 games in 2018 with an ERA nearing 5. His first half of 2019 wasn't great either. Then, suddenly, things clicked. In his last 30 starts, Darvish has struck out 244 hitters while walking just 26. And in those 30 starts, he's gone at least 6 innings in all but 5. He's done this by attacking hitters rather than nibbling around the edges, and it's made him a more effective pitcher than he ever was in Texas or Los Angeles. Not that this will matter for park-adjusted stats, but it's definitely interesting that he's moving from Wrigley Field with the universal DH and juice ball to Petco Park with a supposedly deadened ball and pitchers hitting. What I'm saying is, he might be the front-runner for an ERA crown in 2021. You might be surprised to see Francisco Lindor so low on this list, but that's where his performance has led him. In his last 1,000 plate appearances, that's a really healthy sample size, Lindor has a .271 batting average, .331 on-base percentage, and .483 slugging percentage for an .815 OPS. That's good, but all the hitters remaining on this list are better. Lindor's offensive output has decreased over the past few seasons, and while he's an elite defender at shortstop, the remaining shortstops on this list aren't slouches either. Lindor really needs another huge season to catapult himself back into top 10 conversation, and I definitely think he can do it, but I need to see it happen. The change of scenery alone should help. He's now playing for a franchise that wants him there, rather than one that sees him as a financial burden. While MLB Network and I had some disagreements on Lindor, we're in total agreement on Bryce Harper. We each have him ranked as the 22nd best player. Harper had a fantastic 2020 that flew under the radar. His 157 OPS plus and 420 on base percentage were the second best of his career. For the second time in 3 seasons, he led all of Major League Baseball in walks. But perhaps the most impressive aspect of his season is that he underperformed his batted ball data again. This is a trend with Harper. He had the 3rd highest xWOBA in the whole league, trailing only, get this, Freddie Freeman and Juan Soto. I think much like Ozuna's batted ball performance, Bryce Harper might just be a monster year waiting to happen. Why not 2021? We've made it to number 21 on the Foolish 50. All the numbers ending in 1 are stressful because I know by putting a player at number 21, I'll get comments like, "What, not even in the top 20?" In this instance, that player is DJ LeMahieu. DJ LeMahieu has turned into a crazy bat. He's ranked 10th in OPS plus among qualified hitters since the start of the 2019 season. LeMahieu may have left Coors, but he might have found something even better in Yankee Stadium, where he hit .423 and slugged .784 in 24 home games last year. If I had to nitpick DJ's game, I'd say that while he's been a top 10 hitter over the past couple seasons, I don't think he'll be a top 10 hitter looking forward into 2021. His defense at second base has also declined as he's gotten older. It really wasn't long ago that LeMahieu was seen as a middling hitter and elite defender. Now the skill sets have swapped places. George Springer is a guy that just performs. He has managed a 140 OPS plus or better in 3 of the last 4 seasons. Only 4 other hitters can say that. Mike Trout, Jose Ramirez, Paul Goldschmidt, and Nelson Cruz. And that performance applies to October as well. Springer is tied for 4th all-time in playoff homers with Albert Pujols. Even in the wake of a cheating scandal, I don't think anyone has questions about George Springer as a hitter. The questions are about his contributions elsewhere. And, you know what? He looks like he should be an average or maybe even plus center fielder in 2021. I imagine he'll move into a corner role at some point with the Blue Jays, but that does not seem to be imminent. He's definitely more suited for the position than Teoscar Hernandez or Randall Grichuk. So when you combine that great bat with a premium position, you get a top 20 player, and there's more players like that to come. The bad news is that Nolan Arenado did not hit very well last season. The good news is that Nolan Arenado has hit well in each of the last 6 full seasons, so I'm not really worried about his bat long term. The glove is as good as ever. He was 99th percentile in StatCast outs above average and racked up a seemingly impossible 15 defensive runs saved in just 48 games last season. Some of the lazy analysts might point to his career home road splits at Coors, but they're normal. Every great player in Denver ends up with about 120 TOPS plus at home and 80 on the road. I'm just curious if it'll take him a year to adjust to a lower offensive environment, like it did for Cardinals teammate Paul Goldschmidt. Or if he'll immediately start putting up career best numbers like former Rockies teammate DJ LeMahieu. There's a wide variety of outcomes for Arenado's bat in 2021, but his performance will always be anchored by that platinum glove of his. A player I might be ranking too low is Alex Bregman at number 18. In the last 3 seasons, he's 3rd in FWAR among all position players. There's a few things that turn me off Bregman, but the biggest is that he doesn't crush the baseball on a consistent basis. And while he's very good at third and capable of filling in at shortstop, a couple of his third base peers are generationally talented defenders. What makes Bregman great is his discipline. He's one of the only hitters capable of walking more than he strikes out. So while I'm dropping him further than his recent performance would suggest, his discipline and defense give him a pretty nice floor. This ranking is probably much closer to that floor than his ceiling. Corey Seager is antithetical to Bregman in a few ways. While Bregman overperforms his batted ball data in a ballpark with the Crawford boxes, Corey Seager underperformed his batted ball data in pitcher-friendly Dodger Stadium. While it's difficult to value the 2020 season, I know where I stand on Corey Seager. He's back and better than ever. It took him a season after Tommy John to reach this point, but he absolutely obliterated the baseball last season. His expected batting average was .330, and his expected slugging a whopping .653, according to Baseball Savant's StatCast data. Here's a fun stat. 50% of Corey Seager's plate appearances in 2020 ended in either a walk or a batted ball over 95 miles per hour. Then he went to the postseason and, surprise, surprise, he tore it up there too. MLB Network has him at number 24, but that's just a bit too low for my tastes. There are some 2020 performances we shouldn't overreact to, but I don't think Corey Seager's is one of them. Trevor Story is Trevor Story. He's been Trevor Story for the last 3 years now. Trevor Story is a good hitter who puts up the same home road splits that every good Rockies hitter does. He's one of the best shortstop defenders in the game, and he's also a base-stealing threat. In fact, he led the National League in steals last season with 15. I mean, what more is there to say about this guy at this point? There has not been any significant improvement or decline. He's been the exact same guy for the last 3 years. He rules, and I hope the Rockies trade him. One last thing about Trevor's story, he's the all-time home run leader for shortstops in their first 5 seasons. A big part of that is guys like A-Rod and Ernie Banks who had cups of coffee in their debut seasons, but it's a fun fact nonetheless. Number 15 is Matt Chapman, and I'm really confused as to how people are surprised when I rank him above Arenado. Matt Chapman is every bit the defender that Arenado is, and his park-adjusted hitting stats over the last 3 seasons are just a little bit better. They're actually very easy to compare because they're so similar. It's much harder to compare Chapman to someone like Bregman or Story. Chapman only played 37 games last year. He had a bunch of homers and struck out a ton, in 35% of his plate appearances to be exact. But he also leads the entire league in defensive runs saved since his first season in 2017. So either way, we should just enjoy that 2 of the best defensive third basemen ever are high school teammates playing simultaneously in the big leagues. I just like Matt Chapman a little bit more. Aaron Judge lands at number 14 on this list. Here's the thing, Yankees fans. If you could look into the crystal ball and guarantee me that Judge is going to play 150 games in 2021, would I put him higher? Yes. Good lord, yes. I might even put him in the top 5. But based on what I've seen, the odds of that happening aren't great. He has qualified for the batting title just once in his career, all the way back in 2017. Judge is one of the absolute top players in MLB on a per game or per plate appearance basis. Not only has he slashed 272, 390, 558 for his career, he's also an elite defender in right field. Only Mookie Betts plays the position better, in my opinion. But I can't just assume he'll be healthy this season. I'm ranking him 14th with the idea that he'll play between 120 and 130 games in 2021, which given his past is pretty fair. Freddie Freeman, your reigning NL MVP, has been a top hitter in baseball for a long time. From 2016 to 2020, he ranked 5th, 6th, 13th, 15th, and finally 2nd in league-wide OPS. That's a level of consistency that most players on the Foolish 50 could never even dream of. But while Freddie Freeman has been consistently great, that 1100 OPS in 2020 was not the norm. Freeman is much more of a 950 OPS guy with good defense at first base. MLB Network pushed him all the way up to number 4 on their top 100. That may represent where he ranks in terms of offense, but he's still a first baseman at the end of the day. I think all the hitters I've ranked ahead of him on this list either have more to offer in terms of playing a more premium position, or they represent an even greater offensive upside than Freeman's. So we'll stay here at number 13. Next man up on the Foolish 50 is Bugatti Biebs, Shane Bieber. Bieber does pretty much everything well. He has excellent control, he misses bats, and he pitches deep into games. Last season, he struck out 41% of all the batters he faced, cruising to the American League Cy Young Award. In doing so, he led qualified pitchers in ERA, FIP, XFIP, Sierra, and DRA. Whatever you like, he was the best at it. I think what really makes Bieber special is the arsenal of pitches he's developed. The fastball, curveball, cutter, slider, and changeup are all nasty, do exactly what they're supposed to do. He should be poised to continue his dominance so long as he can recover from COVID and get stretched out at spring training. If there's anything keeping Bieber outside of the top 10, it's not the sample size of 2020, rather the competition. He faced weak lineups in the Central compared to the offerings of the West and East divisions, and that has to be accounted for not just with Bieber, but also with Darvish, Bauer, Giolito, and so on and so forth. Breaking news, Garrett Cole is good at baseball. He did not look his absolute best last season and still finished with a whip below 1 and an ERA below 3. Home runs were a bit of a weakness for Cole in 2020. He surrendered 14 in 73 innings of work and allowed a higher average exit velocity and barrel rate than usual. Part of the homer troubles are because 18.7% of his fly balls allowed left the park, which was 6th highest among qualified starters. That's a trend that you generally expect to regress. Otherwise, the Yankees version of Cole looked just like the guy that dominated in Houston. Cole throws what is generally accepted as the best fastball of any starting pitcher in the league, and his velo, spin rate, and spin efficiency were right where they needed to be. Initially, I wanted to put Bieber ahead of Cole, but the argument about lineup strength in the Central and East divisions made me put Cole just ahead of Biebs. It helps that Cole pitched well in the playoffs while Bieber got rocked in his only start. I wouldn't generally lean on playoff performance that much, but in a season as short as 2020, I'll take all the data I can get. Coming in at number 10 is Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger is exactly who I thought he was, which is a player with high season-to-season variance. We see it with Machado and Harper as well. Bellinger's season-by-season OPS in his career goes 933, then 814, then 1035, then 789. It's like a roller coaster. Part of it is that he's young, and part of it is that he truly is a great yet streaky hitter, and I think you could look at some of his playoff performances to really hammer down that point. What you have to do with a guy like Bellinger is just look at his entire career, which now spans over 2,000 plate appearances. He's a career 141 OPS plus hitter that plays a really nice center field, and it's that defense and speed that makes him great even when he's not elite at the plate. Bellinger is just an insanely valuable player no matter how you slice it. MLB Network also has him at 10th. I think that's about right. Ronald Acuna Jr. was different last year. First of all, it took him a bit to get going. In his 8 games in July, he hit 152 and struck out in 46% of his plate appearances. Then, bam, he had an OPS over 1100 for the other 38 games he played. But what was most intriguing was the walks. The strikeout rate for the season was a bit high because of that atrocious start, but he walked in 18.8% of his plate appearances after being like a 10% walk rate guy. Small sample size, but that was a fascinating development which culminated in a career-best offensive season by almost every measure. Imagine if that trend continues, and he becomes a player that frequently walks, say, 15% of the time. With his power, speed, and defense, that discipline could open him into being a right-handed Barry Bonds, specifically the young Barry Bonds that played in Pittsburgh. That's the type of upside I'm seeing with Acuna. It's a little bit terrifying. Fernando Tatis Jr. is number 8 on the Foolish 50, and my number 1 ranked shortstop going into the 2021 season. Last year, he answered all my questions. In 2019, he had great numbers, but with a 410 BABIP. 2020, he had great numbers and BABIP to reasonable 306. In 2019, he struck out 29.6% of the time. In 2020, he dropped that number by 6% and walked more. In 2019, the defensive metrics weren't great because he made a bunch of throwing errors. In 2020, he cleaned that up and became one of the better defensive shortstops in the league. The batted ball data is brilliant. He had a 386 WOBA last year. His ex-WOBA was nearly 20 points higher. He had the highest average exit velocity in the league. Tatis now has a career hard hit rate over 50%, and he's a 7-WAR player in his first 143 games for crying out loud. If you want to wait for a 300 or 500 game sample size before you put him ahead of Lindor or Story, go ahead. But you're going to be late to crown him. I'm right on time. The peripheral numbers have told me everything there is to know. This is one of those spots where I have disagreements with MLB Network. They have Jose Ramirez at number 19. I have him at number 7. Here's why. In 3 of the last 4 seasons, Jose Ramirez has been a serious AL MVP candidate. No, not just a guy who gets down ballot votes. I mean seriously in the running for winning the thing. In fact, he should have won outright last season. In that 4-season stretch, he only struggled in the first half of 2019. Otherwise, he's been elite for a long time. Ramirez has averaged 6.5 FWAR per 150 games since opening day 2017. That means he's accrued FWAR at a higher rate than guys like Arenado, Chapman, and Bregman. He might not be elite defensively, as he's probably closer to average at the third base position, but the base stealing gives him an extra facet to his game. In the last 3 seasons, Fangraphs grades him as the best base runner in the league, and his 68 steals to 13 caught stealing really back that up. That's an 84% success rate. If there's any reason for concern, it's that dead-end ball. Jose Ramirez is basically the launch angle king for guys without insane raw power. But he can adjust. His entire career is the product of major adjustments. That's just who he is. I'm not really worried about Christian Yelich's hitting. He struggled all season with a 30% strikeout rate, far beyond his usual rate of 20%. He also sported a 259 BABIP. His career BABIP is 354. He ended up having a very weird 3 true outcome season, and that's just not him. But his 111 OPS plus was still above average. The first thing to remember with Yelich is that he was coming off an injury, but didn't get a normal offseason. The second thing to remember is that he uses the video room during games, but couldn't do so in 2020 because of the COVID protocols. Javi Baez and Nolan Arenado had similar problems. This year, they won't have access to the room itself, but they are now permitted to watch in-game video on tablets in the dugout. The third thing to remember is that he had a 786 OPS in 60 games, which is funny because in a 60-game stretch from April 26 to July 7, 2018, he had a 787 OPS. You know what he did that year? Win MVP. Great hitters can have not-so-great stretches. I think he'll rake in 2021. His defense and base running, however, they've slipped. I'd love to see the well-rounded, athletic Christian Yelich this season. He's only 29. He can be a 3 true outcome slugger later. Anthony Rendon is just a monster. He's posted a 900 OPS in each of the last 4 seasons. His teammate Mike Trout is the only other qualified hitter who can say the same. Rendon is a pure hitter in every sense of the word, and I think that's what separates him from the other competitors for best third baseman in the league. They just can't quite rake like him. Bregman has come the closest, but we saw him take that small step back in 2020. For Rendon, it was the same old song and dance, as he rocked a .418 on base percentage, the best of any hitter in the Western divisions. While Arenado and Chapman are generationally talented defenders, Rendon is pretty good as well. According to StatCast, he has the 5th most outs above average at third base since tracking began in 2017. He also runs a positive ultimate zone rating every year. Add it all together, and you get not just the best third baseman, but the best infielder in Major League Baseball. Last season, Juan Soto had a .351 batting average, .490 on base percentage, and .695 slugging percentage. He became the first qualified hitter with an OPS plus over 200 since Barry Bonds in 2004. He did all of this at 21 years old. There was a time when his immediate brilliance wasn't being acknowledged enough. So much so that it prompted me to make a baseball bits, but that time is long gone. Since then, he's won a World Series ring and would have followed it up with NL MVP if not for a positive COVID test. As good as Soto had been coming into 2020, I was a little worried about the upside. It just seemed like, despite his insanely young age, he was a finished product. But no, he found a way to get better. A lot better. And I know it was a small sample size, but dig this. He has a .425 WOBA and .433 xWOBA in his last 162 games. For Trout, it's .424 WOBA and .436 xWOBA, so I'd say Soto is already in the conversation for best hitter in MLB. His defensive value, however, is non-existent. He's a below-average left fielder now moving to right, and because of that, teammate Trey Turner had more F-WAR than Soto last year, even counting from August 5th onwards, which is when Soto started playing. So, if Juan Soto really wants to be considered the best overall player in baseball, he might have to maintain a 200 OPS plus for a full season. And you know what's crazy? He could just do it. Jacob deGrom is the best pitcher in baseball, and it isn't particularly close. There really isn't much to say here. In 2018, he pitched the best individual season of the 2010s. In 2019, he repeated as the National League Cy Young Award winner, and in 2020, he added a tick and a half to his average fastball velocity, becoming the hardest throwing starting pitcher in the league. On February 23, 2021, he was casually hitting 99 miles per hour in his throwing session. Keep in mind, this is February. He's just getting loosened up. This prompted manager Luis Rojas to say, "It's getting ridiculous." He's right. See, deGrom wasn't quite able to three-peat as the Cy Young Award winner, but I think we all know in our gut that he would have pulled it off in a full normal season. After all, his peripherals were superior to Bauer's, and deGrom regularly faced much more difficult lineups than any pitcher in the Central Divisions. Had he grabbed his 3rd Cy Young Award, he'd be the right-handed Sandy Koufax. For now, he'll have to settle for being the right-handed Johan Santana. See, when you have a pitcher of this quality, there shouldn't be much hesitation to rank him high. There's no reason why a starting pitcher can't be top 5, top 3, or even top 1. Kudos to MLB Network for understanding this. Here's the thing about Mookie Betts. He's not the best hitter in the game. In fact, there's several that are better. Since the start of 2019, he's ranked 14th among qualified batters in OPS+, sandwiched between Jeff McNeil and Xander Bogaerts. Of course, I'm conveniently leaving out his 2018 season from that stat. What makes Mookie Betts special is everything else. He's a generational defensive talent in right field. Since his first full MLB season in 2015, he leads all outfielders in Ultimate Zone rating and is behind only Kevin Kiermaier and Billy Hamilton in terms of overall defensive value. This is of course because Kiermaier and Hamilton are center fielders. In terms of runs from base running, he trails only Hamilton, so Betts is great at hitting and absolutely elite at every other facet of the game. He's basically Roberto Clemente plus base stealing. It's insane. In the last 3 seasons, he's ranked comfortably second in F4 among all players. In the last 4 seasons, he's ranked comfortably second in F4. In the last 5 seasons, he's ranked comfortably second in F4. In the last 6 seasons, he's ranked comfortably second in position player F4. And in the last 7 seasons, he's ranked comfortably second. Okay, you get my point. Mike Trout is the best player in Major League Baseball, and he has been for a long time now. I know it's not going to be that way forever, but that's how it is right now. He is the best. Why? Well, in terms of track record, he's the best hitter. He led Major League Baseball in OPS Plus in 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. But in this current landscape, I do look at Juan Soto and think to myself, now that guy is capable of hitting like Mike Trout. It's been the same with Miguel Cabrera and Joey Votto in years past, but Trout plays center field. He doesn't even play it particularly well, but he plays center field and he's fast, so the overall value is substantially greater than what Cabrera, Votto, and now Soto could ever offer. Before the pandemic drastically shortened the 2020 season, Mike Trout was the all-time WAR leader through an age 27 season. I'm going to say that one more time. Mike Trout was the all-time WAR leader through an age 27 season. They've been playing this sport professionally for 150 years. So, in reality, Trout has zero competition with the players on this list. His competition is Ruth, Williams, Mays, and Bonds. There are 49 other great players on the Foolish 50, but Mike Trout is the only one that is seriously in the running for the greatest player in the history of the game. I can entertain a future where Mike Trout isn't MLB's #1 guy. I really can. I think the player that will eventually overtake him is already on this list, which wouldn't have been true just a few years ago. But it's not now. So just enjoy it while it lasts. Watch Mike Trout play whenever you can. In doing so, you're witnessing history. Well, you've made it to the very end. As a reward, here's the list in written form. You might want to pause the video. If you enjoyed this year's Foolish 50, consider tossing me $5 on Patreon. I do an exclusive monthly video Q&A on there, which I'm starting to collect questions for now. Otherwise, enjoy the season and see who I was right about and see who I was very, very wrong about.